Ei, ychsatini the cut Johan. Ach tu yake wuchin chasati yachana. Kleatke away at ʼaduwóos'i at the data way you at. So ach tu asaku yachana. Adu sa de tu asakru ko awe shu ko yuchatangi at gitleyechi. Ewe ach tu asaku yisacho achi. Ya yagi. Ja, yes. Qanachawe hastu data we yutuchtatan. We at ʼaduwóos'i at. Achu ani dachawe. Ja has kana llitch. Achu ʼaduwóos'i hasuti. Achu hana teach. Ha in xatia we chalte katas ha. Klena we at shiki kutzati. Ja at ʼaduwóos'i at. Tsatsi shiki aya. Kleide hina we ach we Maori do yuchatangi aya. Ja ye awe ach atgatu denagu. Atgatu yik denagu. Atgatu yik denagu. Qawe qanu. Ye achke klein chagut awe. We tsatsi at shiki. Helchas kleinach Ja anikach gwell yeil chag. Chadasa klein Ye awe shukat yuchatangi yat ayachyati. Klein kutzati. Gwelliata adadawe ye kakiji. Gwell atgatu yikti yiguti. Just cleig at kutzati. Just cleig at shi ayayi ach. Tessayanach uke. Akin awe. Tessatoashku it ayachachawe hatawasaku chalte katayuchatangi. Kusti. Achawe kunachawe adadi jagachtune. Ja, klingit. Ja, hat achian. De kina. Sutskan. Kunana. Yalte katas de yuchatangi. Kunachawe hatawasaku kenelsini. Akawe watkatu yikti gachtu aati. Awe klein at shiki aya gachtu the kat yete at shik kunachawe hatuwati. Achawe we at ʼaduwóos'i at awe achtuwasaku cho achi ada. Chadasa yichedach. Yid cho Johan benchis.
Ach eat koha.
Cheese.
Ach hiri eat ka. Ach kei tlas uske kwa. Slach ka. Slach anes ka chaak. Touch la tench. Wanganines. Chaak. Sasligal. Kwa. Slash. Slach anes. Slash. Cluck. We at has dakin we at uni ha wakshiyik book ha ha ne ha ne haneshi kawdliyeeji. Our house is on the beach. Our bay is small, but we see heron, eagles, and kingfishers. The eagles are sometimes loud, but not the heron and not the kingfishers. They are the ones who hunt. They are the ones who fly there regularly. We like what we see in front of our eyes, and our house is peaceful.
Okay.
Hooch, gonna sheesh, kate, isa afi.
Kaisha na qeet, nilchish. Kikhawi.
Aya. Screen share.
Cooked.
Fish screen share. Okay.
Kayani yakheti. Wait, kadil
It's doing things I don't understand.
Well, chat kade to us go iti. Yideka kotishi. Yank.
What's kusue?
As not but jagut kuud. Itu jagut atwa itu agasaku kaya ako ha inyu kitani. Ke kwake. Well, he Ḳák'w yata.
Yidat. Yak
Yak ewe.
Gust yaduhe aya. Late ka enak solitary sandpiper. Wisconsin day. Tlingit ani Khatin greater yellow legs. Ash kawdliyeeji. Ya udikin ua woodishuch. Woodikini, woodishuji, ʼaduwóos'i, daadunéiyi, flight bathing, ʼaduwóos'i. Kawdliyeeji Wapuiti, Ḳák'w, as the cut at ʼaduwóos'i. Huchawe.
Yak good cheese.
Nice cheese.
Good ʼaduwóos'i. Okay. Adisatsu de toasagu ha'ini qatani at kawdliyeeji at da. Yeah.
Somehow I'm having the same trouble as him. That's not the right one. I want it to go up here. So I'll get rid of this. Can you guys see that?
Plague. Oh, oops. Plague.
Like,
Plague.
Can you see it?
Tlechasatin.
I want to put it back down then. I can see it, but you cannot. So I want to share my screen, and I see a thing here, and it says whiteboard, iPhone, Google, Chrome, post attendee, and then desktop.
Maybe
Okay, I'll go to desktop. Oh, can you see that?
Chasatin.
Yeah, well, now, you got it.
yak away.
Okay, so, Llingit bird phrases, Llingit, leit kach enach, chega at. The truth. Okay. At kawdliyeeji at yeechatuati. Ach yit du tuasigu at kawdliyeeji at wusiti ka dakin. Bear with me. Du shachawu shada usk. I shachawu tau yachyati zinik. Achawe. Tawak ye chatgogati ka ach cabin de yanach dakin we Old Town. Cabin chande tle do shugawu aya chwadzikin ka siik yak shao siya. I know that's not right. Ye aguchsani. Yeah.
Goodness cheese.
Yak
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, well. Kadena daadunéiyi ne.
Okay. Also are peace, kayek, or yake. Kayek, peace. Student, middle school. His name means peace. His name is Noah. And he wants to be called Kayek. He looked it up, Kayek. He looked it up in the dictionary. Is that okay?
Okay.
Also, Eek Floyd wrote a couple songs, and they're very shaklage, very beautiful. and I'm trying to look at them. Will you look at them?
Ah,
Okay, hold on. Hand on. Hand on, I'll swing you around. Okay. They're right here at Songs by Floyd. And I was looking at it and I was thinking about, he was saying ancestors. He wrote this and I was just putting stuff off to the side when I knew I had to do those bird phrases. So I had to get out of here. So ancestors, shuka, rapid drumming, blah, blah, blah. Gusua eh. Yaduh. Talknuch. Yag. I just was putting that there. I didn't understand that. And I mattered. So yeah. Yeah. I was just trying to put some words in there and I wasn't really sure because the words in English are so hard to wrap around because he was really talking from his heart. His brother, I went to his brother's party, Kichante. His brother's name was Łapuiti, Roy. And he wrote this song. My friend wrote this song, said he was coming from a really spiritual place. And it says like he's wanting to talk to the ancestors. And when I looked it up, it's Hashagun or Achshuka or Hashagun. And I thought it was just really beautiful.
okay.
I don't know how to do it. I was just putting, Tlingit in there. I was doing what you say. I was just looking at the verb dictionary and kind of looking at the tenses and stuff. As usual, having studied for so many thousands of years, it seems like I still, when I get to doing it, it scrambles. So I think I kind of found the core though when I went up to STEAM camp and they asked us what our experience. First of all, they gave us a pi r squared question, 2 pages long, and I freaked out. And then they asked us what our experience in school was. And everybody was born like in the 80s and stuff. And I was born in 1954 and I went to kindergarten in 1959 in Wrangell. It was a painful experience. Kindergarten, first grade, and third grade. I was raised by my grandparents, so just very painful experience in school. And as a school teacher, I really liked where they put me in that place where I wanted to run away. I didn't want to do that math problem. I could have done it if they would have given me a couple days, not 20 minutes. And because I had to think about it quite a bit. And I would rather treat my students with love and respect like you started out tonight to shame them for being different.
Yeah, well.
Goodness, Chase. Goodness,
cheese.
Huh?
Kecha. The idea what the she we at she ten was it was so good. Okay. It was a good. That's
Digigya dat kukwacha ka. Idain at kakwain our pollinate digigyat. Gundasaja yakyati. Cook the cooling day with the kins of talk eater. Owe shinget ani day with the kin way the gigya. One canines yes. Owe Mexico day with the kins of Shikuze. Owe Shad Kutska Ḳák'w Shad plain Shad plain Akadak Saklahad de Gitgayach Chuck a Duty at has Ayau Achwe dwneistad wyd o cyn wed y gytgea. Ych favorite ti yw e. Hwch yw e.
Jeez, Kudnacha, okay. Okay, ha. Kun jeez you hanach tu yek isach wa achi. Ye awa kedenu qais at. Okay. Jeez. Zukke. Dusa.
Gwell Ḥák'w. Mae ti eich ach tu ye ti mas at kawdliyeeji at ide yadach nishin yel heet chagut at kawdliyeeji at su Lleida hin chawagen ach tligen shuk chwasitin Llchwasaku wanach sawek ach tu yeti ach ish awe we shuk gwell chatwagak Ega yak yeti well sorry well the key on Ḳák'w the key yeti we at kawdliyeeji at su the key dach kawdliyeeji kokena yak yeti gwell there awe there
Kleide hin wush kanachwitu da at nat asa hin. Llingitstu tultu and we kleine hawe hit ye. Shashu ye hit the way. Okay, how ti. Ayuk hoa. Yaha chuch awe yenda kin. Tsegedi tanu. Achu awe ku kanachowe achas a kawdliyeeji. Ajowe is tekatye de kulluwagu kwega. Asal ka koneko a. Koneke u ik achu a. Yewe tlatatoshka hachu yewe tiyo uski ata konachowe us. Yegu ginki a. Jana we ach a kawdliyeeji awe wan kanins konachoya. Tsegedi tanu. Wan kanins suhe kakak. Ja uski a. Wan kanins qawt itzitin. Ach kawdliyeeji awe. It was a otiko a. Segedi tanu. Ak esa awe. Segedi. Gwashiata asai yata adach. Speak ye adi. Tanu awe kudziti. Ye awe. Ka tla. Ka dukayadi. Duch ati. We tanu atunach. Ye awe ka tla ka kayadi. Atcha awe duch awati. Ye awe. We tsagedi du tanu adachawe kudziti gwelgiwe we tsagedi tanu ajawe yidu sago at. We gako a tlesho tisaku asadu sak. Asadu sak we bat ko a asadu sak. Kleide hina ya gorchasatin we kuch kach hechasaku. Achu awe llingit chinach yuch alla atgi. Gehas yawa ka. Yandakin kutzin. Yewe hast du tundatani. Kutzin uwaya. A keji e kutziti. Ye awa. Eke a. Kleide hin. Ya Minnesota kechat yeti. Ya naki de awe watu a kuch. Sha shu yu hiti a ye wuti. Akawe ye ha wuti wal da kunya gi khanach. We gao chakut ye de we ach kusti kusatin giwa konachowe wutu da na yu. Thad yin ka kunnach we tsutad we gol clay do sugar. Kone ya tlab gadach has for good. Katkinach ko. What's that name? We thad yin a katchat se wo kagen. Thad yin we kunnach we khwata. Thad khatu wajak. Chayuko ach kunnach wudakin. Hechwasaku dasawe. Asak shawe. Dach de hin. Naske de hin. Kechat witzigit. Kinde awe khonuk. Aka kunnach ach yade wudakin. Kajas ach kunnach wudakin yatayach. Ha! Ye awe kone yu kautlagan wits ina. Khosatin at yandakin awe. Tsagedi tanu. Hita khashat kakho akawe our ish khokishi awe an. Kashach wutlak. Ja ach tlak ko a kechwats git. Khatch ewa was dasa ye yisne. Tat yin aya. Kasi ye away kunugu. Klek tsagedi tanu awe khwasatin kakho akawe khojaki. Qadnachawe yasatki atqa. Kaltu utusatin. Qatatayide utuwa. Utatawe utusatin qoa. Just yet away the ho. The khaku away we chu tin would do the yehwe hit. Just atut away the khaku. Ye awa just chush with the shot. Like chush would the shot. Kwashki way. Who away top. Has to us a go, has not teach. Ya yagi. Khatka we hit a shot. Ya ye tatawe a quatlak. Ye away a tund the time. Kastagi nach away the handik a good. Kanacha kastagi nach a day at kanal kaklias ye. We hit a tin. Ye away khoshakuk. Yatayach. Kanach konike wega. Ye away took the time. Wasa ye kakhosane ye dat ko a khunch aye wote ach ite de shi shaye ta ka gweili ach tu wasagu we shaye ta ka gweili atu de yersane gande kakwa gut an ach yat yachwe shaye ta ka gweili yat yersane atakhu takin as yek dewe ach tu ye ke tlachwa jaqi we tsagedi tanu gun shish
Renee.
ah
We nata sahini hidit kua sekatwe tsutat sekatyeede we sigedi tani hatli we nada utu sitin.
yeah oh goodness cheese yak who check how you katangi think it kenach takat you oh that's okay
I'm thinking that these, you know, when you tell us a nice long story like that, I can hardly wait to be able to understand more than maybe 25% of it. And but I love trying to listen. It's very good practice. And I suppose we could go back, since you're recording this, we could go back in our tapes and just listen again, and as a group or a smaller study group, try and, you know, make sure we were getting each line. So goodness sheesh.
The basics I don't know what made me think of it probably just listening cheap
Adana wegiwa.
that part's not for translating Just kidding. Just thinking about working with the gang in the interior, and we were all in Carcross in a little cabin. Shashu is how I've heard cabin said. We were in a cabin, like it was a nice big facility, beautiful, beautiful place there. And we're studying Tlingit, and one day, if I remember right, all of a sudden a bat started flying around, and people were screaming. People get so scared of them. People were screaming and trying to figure out what to do. So we all left, and I think we figured out how to chase it off. And some of them might have crawled back into their crevices and gone back to sleep. But usually they sleep during the day, so it's not a big problem. But that made me think of another time and I was talking about the name, Tsikiti Tanu, or Tsikiti Tani, or Tsikiti Tan. But it's such an interesting compound because it's a compound within a compound. So Tsikiti is a beaver, but it sure seems like it's Tsik Yi Adi. All the parts seem to line up as far as being thing below the black bear, which is really interesting. And then Tanu is, I was trying to say, is on away ka tla du kayeti ach du ti atcha. But it doesn't, it makes sense, but I don't think it really works. But why wouldn't it work, and why would it maybe make sense? Ka yedi du kayeti ach du ti an we tanu. Atunach, what on atunach? So Ḳák'w, people's mothers, dukayedi, their unborn child, it should be duchech ati, they feed them atunach we tanu, through the tanu. But then linguistically that should kind of make sense, but it doesn't go to their mouth. That's how you say feed them. Echduti, or whatever the pronouns might be. But so tanu is the word for the umbilical cord. So the name for the bat is the beaver's umbilical cord because it was born out of the umbilical cord. But I don't know the story, and I think it's an interesting name. Then that led me to think of another time in Minneapolis. I went to a cabin for a few days with some friends, with some relatives. And I lived a different life back then. Yeah, would drink all kinds of beers when we were there, have all kinds of fun. And I don't anymore, but it's no big deal. People do. It's no big deal. And and we went to sleep. I was sleeping on this couch, and it was dark. I kind of told the story a little bit out of sequence, but then I corrected it. And I was sleeping, and something flew over my face. And then, I kind of woke up, and then it did it again. And then the third time, I sat up. And then it flew right at my face and went right over my head. So I got up, and I turned the light on, and I see this bat flying around. So I grab a broom to try and hit it. But of course, I can't. And it's so fast. And so my auntie wakes up. She's like, "What are you doing? It's so weird." Just like swinging a bat like, a broom like crazy. I said, "No, there's a bat. I'm trying to kill it, but I can't." So then I didn't see it, and so we all just went back to sleep. And in the morning, everybody's walking kind of quickly but really quietly and sneaking down the stairs. And I said, "What's going on?" They said, "There's a bat up there." So I went, and it was just hanging on the wall. There's a wooden wall, so it just got its claws into the wall. And it's just tiny. These things are so tiny, and people are very scared of them. And mice, too. They're so little, but people get really scared of them. And so I saw it there, so I went and got the broom again, and I snuck at it. I was trying to go real quiet and slow. And then I pushed it with the broom, and I had it pinned against the wall. But I didn't have a plan. And so it just started screaming, like really loud screaming. I was like, "What do I do?" And so my brother, he was there, and I said, "Give me a pillowcase." And I put the pillowcase over it, and then I carried it outside, and it flew into a tree. And that was the whole story. But it's kind of fun to just sort of reflect on stuff and try and narrate it and think it. And there's all kinds of stuff I get stuck on too, so it's fine.
It was really interesting, and I appreciate it even more now that I know what you were talking about. 그러시지.
Okay. So, any language questions that you folks were thinking about?
You know, one of the words that we used in the phrases last time was, you know, do you need something? Itinach.
Mhm.
And it's always struck me that itinach is an et, talk, et. It's used in a lot of different places. And I think that's a very interesting word. So I want to know more about it.
Yeah, ite is such an interesting word. It's sort of like the
Like, yeah, like sunbeams or moonbeam footprints and all that cool stuff.
it's the remains of something, right? And so then there's all kinds of words or something, if you put it after, you have something specific, like ite would be the crumbs after somebody eats, and kan ite would be the charred ground where somebody made a fire. Ite would be any kind of footprints. And then there's some different things like ha'itiqaqu is our descendants. So they're the ones that will be in our remains. So sometimes it gets to this big conceptual level, like we'll all die off and someone else will be here. They'll be our descendants. But then there's also, it could be just sort of like if I'm the teacher and I couldn't make it to class, so I had someone come and they might say, "Khone khahan." I'm standing in the place of khone. And I'm just not there. It's not a big deal. So it could be pretty straightforward in terms of that. Like, I'm where that person used to be. You can also use it in compounding with other parts. Iti yanach, more than the last time. Itiqin, less than the last time. So it can work like that. There's also, I've heard it, what is it? They'll say itiqutan. Is that how they say it? Like the next summer? And then, yeah, it's in the name for Glacier Bay, Sit Itiqi. So the bay that's in the place where the glacier used to be. And so there's a lot of stuff you can use for that. Like it was here and then there's something left over from when it's gone. And then when you say itinach, going through the place where it was, that's how you get to needing, which is really interesting because it can also be, that's what Nora said. She had a conversation with Kaisha, Ḳák'w did shortly after Nora's husband's passed away. And she was saying, we really need them, our husbands. And so she was really talking about that as well. And so it's really interesting. There's a whole bunch of conceptual stuff that you could probably put together and analyze and see how it, because you could say, I'm sitting in the place of, or I guess I'd say cha'a. I'm sitting in the sun patch. I don't know how you always describe that in English. Like when the sun shines through and you could see that spot where it is, like especially coming through a window and where your dog or cat might always like to lay down in the sun. Close itit. Okay.
Wasa ʼaduwóos'i, bat. I think you said cuisine, but that's mice. So is it bat too?
Yeah, no, it's Tsegedi Tanu is the
Oh, sagadi tanu. Okay.
yeah, and so it's the umbilical cord of the beaver. But there was a point in the story where I brought up cuisine, and where I brought up Ḳák'w and cuisine, where I was saying people are also scared of mice. And when we were in Carcross and someone asked, after the whole bat fiasco settled down, people were saying, Wasat wasak bat. And I knew there was a word for it, but I couldn't think of it. And then some of the elders there were calling it Underkin Cuisine, which was the flying mouse or the flying rat. And so, but then we looked up that name, and then we started going down this thing. Oh, why is it called that? Whoa, what? Why did it come from that umbilical cord? Oh, where's the story? So It was fun.
Yeah, I understood that the Underkin Cuisine. That's why I was trying to figure that out.
Okay. Sheesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are amazing listeners. Yakecha.
A bat actually looks more like a fox than a mouse. What's the word for fox?
Fox is nakatse.
Nakase gagank.
What's interesting is
Uh,
nakatse is not a Shinget word.
what is not?
Nakatse. For
Nagats.
the name for fox we get from our Qunana neighbors.
Hmm.
Same with Watsik, I think, the caribou. And yeah, they do. Their little ears and stuff. So when you
Caribou. Oh yeah, caribou and Khoikan Athabaskan is Medzich. So it sounds a lot like Batzich.
Thinking in it's Badzich.
Huh.
Do you know of a word Wasis? Wasis. Wasis.
WAS. No, it sounds.
It's what they used to call Biorka Island.
Oh, really?
Wasis. Is that Tlingit, Russian, anything?
Well, let me look in the place name book and see. Biorka? Is that what you said?
Biorka Island, yeah. It's Rudolph Walton's native allotment. He called it Wasis.
Yeah, that is what it's called, but I don't know what that means. So yeah, if you encounter stuff, there is this scanned place name document. I'll put it for our class. I'll put it under the resources for our class, but it's also under tlingitlanguage.com resources, beginning resources, I think it's under. And so yeah, here it is. So here's Wasis and Wasis'i and Wasis Yedi. So it certainly is the original name to have sort of like a bunch of things that are also called that. But usually when you open a PDF, whatever you're looking at, there's a function to do a search. So I did a search for Biorka, and that came up. And so same with like, there's a place called Bishop Point. What's that place called? So then if you enter Bishop, you should be able to pull it up, and then you get Keishichika. And so, yeah, this is really useful, and I keep it on my phone. So if I'm anywhere, and then I see a place, like there's a place called Point Retreat. So I'll enter retreat, and you get retreated, and then I can hit, well, what's the next retreat? Retreating upward. What's the next one? Oh, there's Point Retreat. And then I look over, and it's Hutsnuwushatu. So it's really handy to use. The maps are wonderful as well. Sometimes a little hard to tell exactly where things are, but this is a great resource to have and to use so we can start bringing all those names back. Then there are some places that are not documented too. So the other conversation we're going to have to start having is, how do we cook up new names if we need to? And I think by studying really closely the old ones, and then having a consensus with our communities about how to do that and how to make sure we're running it past the appropriate clans and peoples. But if we don't, then they'll just find some guy to name it after. It's Bob's Bay. It's right next to Jim's Mountain. It's over by Fred's Lake. So like just to bust that convention up, I think keep looking them up and keep using them.
Kuning,
Ah,
I was wondering, do you know if there's a word for elk? I think I saw it somewhere on K'ák'w. At one point, someone asked, and there was maybe a name sort of like possibly Watsik, or like a caribou of the something.
yeah. I can't remember, because I know we've talked about it before, because folks have asked, and I asked some different elders about, I never got one. And for some reason, we always struck out on that one and ladybug. So,
Renee,
ah,
I was on that. Dick invited me to that conference when Constance and Gillian were on, and I did ask them how to say coyote, askatu yiktakatli, and I asked them about elk too, because I had made a bingo game with animals, and they just laughed and said ink, E-N-K, ink, and they were just laughing, and so Dick said ink, there you go.
okay. Yeah, I guess they kind of hang around the mountain. They're a little bigger than a caribou, right?
They're on the Alaska Highway a lot between Whitehorse and Haines Junction.
Huh.
Big herds of them.
Yeah, and sometimes I would look up like where does the name come from, and is there another indigenous group that has these around, and you know, so also called Wapuiti. Huh. Okay, we'll do some. We'll see if we can do it. Maybe we'll get our Ḳák'w to cook up a name with the Nasahash and Kaisha if they want to. See what they think.
We could ask Kaisha too.
Oh yeah.
For it in Southern Shoshone.
Yeah, right. We can just adopt it because usually sometimes I'll find what other folks call it, and then we'll say, okay, well we could do the similar pattern. Sheesh. Yuck. Hey.
Did we ever find a word for pickled?
For what?
Pickled?
No. So a word for pickle, we might have to take a walk around to get here. So there's no word for cucumber, but what's kind of funny, I think, is there's a word for sea cucumber. Even though it's an animal, one's an animal, one's a vegetable. I know that. Well, one's maybe a fruit. I wouldn't put in a fruit salad, so whatever. But we could call it ʼaduwóos'i, which is a funny name, I think. So I'm okay if the naming committee wants to reject my proposal. That's what I would suggest for cucumber. But if you wanted to pickle something, it goes into the kawdliyeeji. That would be like some sort of pickling thing. So you could probably, it's gonna get long. You could go ʼaduwóos'i ʼaduwóos'i, or you could go ʼaduwóos'i talk ʼaduwóos'i. Or you could just cut right to the yin, but then it sounds like pickled sea cucumber, which sounds pretty yummy.
Yeah, Panak and I were wanting to talk about adobo, but we couldn't figure that one out.
When someone first asked me, I said, why don't we call it ʼaduwóos'i? But that's only because I don't like pickles. And so, but sometimes interesting, there's another conversation here too. Like, what do we do with food names sometimes we're not always comfortable with them. Kingisti used to say, we shouldn't be calling a turkey shaqaiq. And it's a tricky thing because some ancestor named that thing. That name goes back quite a ways, but it does mean snot nose, so it's not always the nicest thing to associate with food.
Pancakes.
Huh?
Pancakes.
Sakneen is snot bread. So again, there's another one, which, my kids know what it is. So then some people really don't like ʼaduwóos'i, which is the name that I learned for soy sauce, which is land otter urine. But then chanwanhini, I think, is a worse name than that. So because chanwan comes from Chinaman, and I think that's a word that we need. And so there are some words that we should be examining and saying, we've been having these conversations as well about a variety, like what do we call a group of people? And those are some things as an indigenous language where if there was a name for people, we examine that name, and if it comes from something that's a bit of a stereotype or something associated with sometimes negativity, then we say, okay, let's come up with a different name or use what they call themselves and then go from there.
What's land otter urine again?
Soy sauce and this ʼaduwóos'i. But some people really don't like that one. And I understand, but when I was
Ďu'q'u?
ʼaduwóos'i,
How do you spell that?
Peppermint, kushta something.
ʼaduwóos'i.
Peppermint.
So ʼaduwóos'i is L high, that's a high long U, so O with a high tone mark, X apostrophe U, which is ʼquetz'lú'q'u is also a color. I think it compounds like that. And that's dog pea yellow. But I think, ʼgunditsaji hotly, there's another one. That's the name for honey. And it's, there's two things that people are arguing with that. They're saying ʼgunditsaji hotly. One is it's bee poop, and that doesn't sound like a very appetizing thing. Like I didn't talk English to my kids, I still don't. When they were real little and I was putting honey into something, they said, what's that? I said, ʼgunditsaji hotly. Yito agesaku? And she said, no. And so, she didn't try for a long time. But other people are saying, well, it's not their poop, it's their vomit, so it should be ʼgunditsaji hotly. So these are the fierce debates that are going on in the Tlingit language community about food names. Kashitsuku hin tak. Kashitsuku hin tak. Askatuyik yeni. But maybe it's too long. We do this all the time. Sometimes we'll cook it up and we're like, that's way too long. Kashitsuch is sour. So kashitsuchu hin is the word I've heard for some sort of pickling water. What do you call it? Juice?
Brine.
Brine, there you go. Sheesh. In the next 17 minutes, back to the verb monsters. Every verb has a classifier. Every verb has a stem. It must have those two parts.
Oh, verb huni.
Oh, yay. What about
Because we need to learn these and they're going to help us, right?
Ye daadunéiyi at the verb helper. How about that? So every classifier, I think, has a natural default state. 0, sa, sha, sha. That's the starting point for these classifiers. Every one of them belongs to a group. If it changes the group, it's a different verb. Yak'e and keshushke are not the same verb. They are opposites. Yak'e, keshuke, keshushke. Good, not good, bad. So keshushke is a different verb. Okay? Usually it's just going to go back and forth between its natural state and adding this I, the letter I to it. That's all. We just add a letter I to say that verb happened, and that includes it is this way, right? It must have become good to be good. Must have gotten sick to be sick. Must have gotten strong to be strong. So it's that way. There's also a D component that can be added. That usually means that someone doing it to themselves. Okay? So there's a whole bunch, once you put chush or whoosh in front of it, you should be expecting the D to pop up. Shchotzetin, I saw myself. Whoosh tudzechan, we love each other. That's why the D starts popping in there. Okay? That's the basics of the classifier. Each of these groups has a kind of a generalized meaning. This is just the default form. Sick, good, whole bunch of things. The most verbs by far are zero classifier verbs. It will switch to an S or an L for a couple of different reasons. One, if you say it's not just that way, someone made it that way. Yak'e, it's good. Yishak'e, you improved it. You made it good. Yanik, sick. Ichsanik, I gave you a cold. I got you sick. So sometimes we're saying it's not just happening, somebody's making this thing happen. Yit'a, outlet'a, it's warm. They warmed it up. Okay? The other thing is the S group is often associated with classifications. It's a certain type of thing. Yeti, to be. City, to be one of those, or to become one of those. It's a group. Now it puts it into a group. Huh? Okay. Awachut, dragged it. Awsachut, dragged it by a handle. So sometimes it's changing, just saying there's some classification going on, which is why the whole thing is called a classifier. The L group is sometimes associated with having something. If I put a hat on and it had these two like Mickey Mouse ears on it, shekuku ts'ah. It's a hat with ears. If I put a vest on, it's called shishjini. Kesh ush jin. It's not arms. There's no arms on it. You can have sag to put your mitten on, and you could have shik'eqi sag, the fingered mitten. That's a glove. Kushaguz, the weather has clouds. The SH group is often associated with kind of negative things, but not all the time. So like wutchakak, a bird landed or a plane landed. Atwutchakain, they jumped around. But there's a whole bunch of them that switch over to SH for kind of unlikable things. That's the classifier. What you practice is just looking at verbs, seeing what the classifier is, and just making a note of it. We're going to look at that a little bit later. For now, we're going to shift our attention to these things. The object and the subject pronouns. The order is to whom it happened, then who did it. That's the Tlingit order. Okay, so to whom it happens, then who did it. That's the order that you say them in. This is all of them right here. Chat, happened to me. Ha, happened to us. Happened to you. Ye, happened to y'all. Zero or happened to them. Ka or k, happened to people. Ut, happened to something. And sh, did it to themselves. Okay? That is how they work. The third person is unmarked. Like if you say kachwanik, there's an object in there. It's just unmarked. But it would switch to akawanik if the third person is both the subject and the object. Because you couldn't have two zeros, you wouldn't know that they were both there. We write zero just to say you don't hear anything, there's nothing there. Right? So you say, I did it, you did it. That's how Tlingit works. With the subjects, I did it. Tu, you did it. or doing it. Or sorry, we did it. You did it. Y'all did it. The third person is always unmarked. Don't put any don't put anything there. We're just saying they did it, right? Cha, icha, cha. That's just how Tlingit works. Is someone. It happened or people do it. Okay? It was made. The will, going back to the classifier, if you have a fourth person subject, it will, for all zero group verbs, it must be, there cannot be a D in there. It has to be or dua. Can never be duda, can never be dude. For all the non-zeros, this is a way Tlingit has lots of rules where it's like zeros, non-zeros, for classifiers and conjugation type. For non-zeros, it must be plus D. So it has to be dus, dudze, dush, dudle, dush, dudji. Must. Okay. Let's take a look at these objects. Who does the verb happen to? But it's Tlingit, so it's not always like just the verb happens to people. It's a little bit more than that. It's also for something to be a state verb, right? When you have a state verb, you are actually saying me good, you good, or me good, us good, you all good, them good, people good, something good, them all good. So it does use object pronouns. So we're going to do a little bit of fill in the blank work here. Here they are. The answer keys right on your left. And right here, you're going to get an object plus a. So let's take turns. Don't answer all of them. So if you've said one, just wait and let other folks try it. How would I say, I am good?
A.
Ḳák'w. We are good.
Ayake.
Yeah, oh wow. Oops. The lights go out if we stay still in here. You are good.
Okay.
Yeah, oh wow. Y'all are good.
Okay.
They are good. Single they.
Okay.
Say it one more time.
Yuck.
Right? So there is no subject. Because there's no subject, the third person will always be unmarked, always be zero. If there's a subject, if you have third person, then it will convert to the So you can say ʼaduwóos'i, but you couldn't say ʼawak' or ʼayak'. It doesn't work. People are good.
Kuyok
For this one, we are going to say ʼkayak', but ʼkuyak' is also correct. However, because there's a kuwak' or kuyak' verb that has to do with the weather, technically you could be, if I say wasakuati, I could be asking you, how's the weather and how's the people? But because of that confusion that could be caused, if there's a k version of that verb, switch it to ka. That's kind of the guideline, is it's going to be k unless there's a weather one, then you switch it to ka. Or if there's an arealis built into the verb, like kudziti. You couldn't say kudziti. You could say ka kudziti. Okay. Something is good.
Atyake.
Atyake. Them all is good.
Hasyake.
Hasyake. Yeah, away. Goodness, geez. So there they are. Chatyake, hayake, iyake. And a lot of it is sort of like just committing these to memory and then applying them to the verb. And in this case, the verb doesn't change a whole lot. We write the objects as their own word, except for I and a in q. So if you see the hyphen on there, that means it attaches to the verb. Iyake is one word. Yiyake is two words. Just practice those conventions as well.
So he, she, or it is good is the same as they are good.
They being, well, so we're kind of shifting towards moving away from the she, he, and just using a they. So they plural would be hasyake. But either she or he or it, all of them work for yake. And it's confusing.
Is that part of the new politically correct movement, or is that old stuff there?
Well, it is sort of trending with language. Like if you look at the verb dictionary, and it's written in the 1970s, and it's amazing. Almost every third person sentence is translated as he. That used to be just the default. And then it sort of transitioned to a she, he, and now it's transitioning to a they. But just to sort of get folks to see, like, and we're not changing the shingit. We're just saying, like, there's no gender in that pronoun at all. Just that folks can say, yake, 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 yake. Okay, let's try one more. So now everybody gets to be good looking, okay? Pleasant face. So here's the same thing. We're going to use these objects right here. There's the form of the verb. An imperfective state verb is going to be yakse'an. So, who's going to take it? I am good looking. Okay. Chat yakse'an. We are good looking.
Hayaksyan.
Yeah, away. You are good looking.
Yaksyan.
Yeah, away. You all are good looking.
Yaksyan. Kadanye Yaksyan.
Singular, they are good looking.
Would it just be Yuxian?
Yeah, away. People are good looking.
Who?
Yeah,
K-O-O?
Tuyaksaan. Tuyaksaan. Yeah, away. They all are good looking.
Hasyaksi
Hasyaksaan. Yeah, away, Johan. Just to do a little playing around with opposites, if you change yaksaan to yaushaji, now they're all hideous looking. ʼaduwóos'i, 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 ʼaduwóos'i. So now we've all had like good-looking people and hideous-looking people, and but the thing that is changing is the verb. That's what we start with this practice, is say, okay, that takes an object. You can now use any state verb in the imperfective. Once you look up that imperfective, you should be able to switch them through all of these. This is step one. This is step one. So let's see. Guys got the weekend. Well, and there's some things to study. So let's do this over the weekend. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of reading to do. Let me pull it up first and I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay, stop this, share this. Let me find where to go. Okay. Chapter 16 in Hausanech Hayukatangi deals with object and subject combinations. Over the weekend, what I'd like you to do is to just read this or review it. Oh yeah, we don't have any class on Monday. So now you got extra time to read all of this stuff. Yeah, don't come on Monday. But check out this chapter. It talks about some concepts like transitivity. It's a big word that says, is there an object, is there a subject? And you can have just one, just the other, or both. It talks about how we mark this stuff, and then it shows some examples. Why we write some of them as their own words, that's explained in here. Why some of them are written as part of the verb. Some third-person combinations. Been going through with some examples of loving and how things start changing. The third-person combination. Object pronouns. And then so some of these are just saying, some of them will notice this. We change it by saying, ach tuwasagu, it tuwasagu, do tuwasagu. And we'll start looking at some examples of that. It talks about what types of this kind of object examples. The lists of the pronouns. And it still says she, he. That might change some point. And so we got object, subject, possessive, postpositional. Then it starts moving through some examples. I'm dirty, you're dirty, they're dirty, we're dirty, y'all are dirty, they are dirty, people are dirty. So read this stuff, take a look at all these tables, and when we get together on Wednesday, we'll talk a little bit, and then we're going to take a look at this other thing, which maybe we haven't done in here. I don't know. Some of you might have done it, some of you might not. But here it is. It's a conjugation party. So you're going to predict these. I'm dirty. You're dirty. And so the goal is somewhat, I think, memorizing these lists of pronouns and starting to see how it changes when you start moving them around. We're also going to take a look next week. I will post the basket bay stuff. If you want to take a listen to it, take a look at it over the weekend. You don't have to. But on Wednesday, we're going to do some of this. But what I want to start with on Wednesday is just listening to Shah Dog tell two stories. In Hashuka, it's published as one story. But if you listen to tape, it is two different stories. I've always wondered that. I was like, why did he just jump to the going under the glacier? because it's two different recordings, which is totally fine. We're going to listen to it. We're going to look at the tlingit, and then we're going to start walking through that so we have some examples from a big thing of tlingit from a master storyteller. Any questions or thoughts or anything before we sign off for this long Labor Day weekend?
You're going to post the Shadok about Ḳák'w on the Tlingit.edu website?
It'll be at klinkitlanguage.com. Go to Learning Tlingit and Advanced Tlingit. And then if you scroll down the classes, what I do is I'll post the recording of the class, and then usually I'll say the date, like I'll say September 1st, 2021. Underneath that, I'll say the things we talked about. So it'll be kawdliyeeji and then Q&A, and then verb helpers. I got to change. Now I got to take the monster off of the thing, which is fine. And then, let's see. Then it'll be handouts. So any slideshows we look at, any texts that we look at, I put a link to them so you can have it. So you can look at the verb monsters thing and look. Don't look too far ahead because I want you to predict these things. But especially once we're done, then you'll have it so you can just keep practicing these things. So if you look later tonight, it'll say September 1st, and then there'll be a link to the video of the class that we had. If you wanted to rewatch it, or if you missed it, you could watch it, or if you know someone who wants to watch it. But under the handouts, there will be the recording for Ḳák'w, which you'll be able to listen to or download. And then there'll be an updated, so I retyped it and adjusted the translations for some of them. And there was also a couple missing lines. It was really cool. And it's so hard to transcribe and translate Tlingit. The Dowenhauers were by far the best at it. But even when you listen to some stuff, you're like, whoa, there's a whole sentence in there. And as I was writing, I was like, where is the sentence? So I'd have to listen to it a whole bunch of times so I could write it down. And then some of the translations are adjusted because they're specifically for learning Tlingit. So it doesn't quite have the same amazing flow that they came up with. But we'll look at that. And then we'll take some parts and we're going to pull some of those verbs apart to see what's in them. That's the plan.
I can't make it to study group tomorrow, but good luck and have fun to people who are going. I just put the study group notes and the Zoom link for that in the chat, and a few of us were meeting Mondays and Thursdays, noon to 1. So have fun.
Nishlato, I know you're not in charge of it, but I'm wondering if Monday we would have study group even though we don't have class. I guess if nobody shows up, we don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whoever shows up, we study together.
Goodness cheese.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll go or not. I might be out playing.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk next week as well about potentially, and I'll talk with the intermediate class and the beginning class. I'll have Ida talk with them and Kushiek about starting potentially at just some other times too. And it's like, show up when you can, just because some folks can't make certain times. And so we'll set up a few of them and see, hopefully they're self-sustaining. And so, okay, good cheese, Johan.
Cheese.
Cheese. Cheese kunnen.
Yeah.
Is that is the reference in the chat, is that accessible when we call up the class on YouTube?
Yeah, so at klinkitlanguage.com, so like under the resources, I usually include the chat as well. So you should be able to pull up the chat, all the stuff that's in there. Okay. Okay.